means it's Thursday.
Yes, it does. You wait till the Intertoto Cup comes up later in the summer.
Saka was great in that.
He was indeed. Here's Alejandro Moreno. I'm Adrian Healy. Paul Mariner and Shaka Hislop of the Intertoto Cup fame is with us. And we have some powerful split screen for you here. I think a split screen we've never seen before. Bradley Wright Phillips of the New York Red Bulls joining us, and Raphael Honigstein of Munich, of Bavaria, and of London is also on board. We will start in the Europa League. Both English teams, both London teams in action. Paul, got to start with your boys, Arsenal, who came in rip-roaring form, didn't they, after those 3 successive defeats. But this time they were on the right end of the result. They got the 3 goals after a bit of a dodgy start.
Yes. Look, when we're talking about levels, this was not a great football match, but the result for Arsenal was a good result. The unfortunate thing was that Valencia got that 1 goal, which may cost them eventually. The one thing that I was watching this afternoon is if you've got a somewhat of a patched up back 3, to me you were protected with the best possible players that you've got to protect, and he chose to play Guendouzi and Granit Xhaka. And to me that's not going to get it done. You've got a guy on the bench, a fan favourite. He puts a shift in Torreira. He's a fantastic player. He should be in that side. The one thing that was pleasing for me was that he actually played Ozil, Aubameyang and Lacazette in that forward attacking area. And that basically was the difference, because both defences, Valencia and Arsenal, were very, very poor. Unfortunately, Arsenal could have had more goals, yes. Lacazette could have scored more goals, Aubameyang could have scored more goals. But at least they were effective in the box. And I must admit, it didn't fill me with joy that Arsenal actually won 3-1, because I didn't think they played particularly well. I thought the level of the game was poor.
Brad, for obvious reasons, you have some Arsenal leanings. Were you filled with joy by the Gunners' display today?
Yeah, I can understand what Paul's saying, but you know how things have been going of late. I was really happy. Obviously, after that first start, I think it was. I mean, the start of the game, it was a bit worrying, but after that, to get 3 goals, you know, and give yourself a good chance at the Mestalla, I couldn't be more happier.
Yeah, I mean. Got to be happy with the result.
Look, let's not beat around the bush. When we were eulogising yesterday about the level of that performance with Barcelona and Liverpool, we get this today. All right, it's the Europa League and all this sort of stuff, and Arsenal at home and take it to Valencia. So it was such a mediocre level of performance by both sides. I looked at Ali, I said, Ali, is this going to be difficult going back to Mestalla?
Yeah.
He said, well, yeah, it probably is. But so 3-1 might be okay. But I'm not coming out. I'm happy with the result, don't get me wrong, yes. But the manner of the performance, I still don't get the way that Unai Emery puts this side out, the way that he protects that very weak defensive line.
Your assessment, Ali, on both sides of the ball, perhaps?
Well, I can tell you that the contrast that Paul is talking about between what we saw yesterday and what we saw tonight, it's clear and it's obvious. And a lot of it starts with the fact that neither one of these teams, Valencia or Arsenal, can really defend. In 1v1 situations, over distance, in space, in the midfield, there's just so much space, and it becomes a back and forth that perhaps the quality of the game is not that great, but it becomes entertaining because, look, there's mistakes everywhere, and there's people open in areas in which they shouldn't be open, and then the chances come from both Arsenal and Valencia. From Arsenal's perspective, you take the 3-1, but you must be very, very careful that you think it's all said and done, because it is not. Simply because you yourself, Arsenal, have not been very good on the road. And by very good, I mean they've been awful. And so there's got to be an understanding from Arsenal that they have to defend better, and Valencia has to take advantage of the opportunities, because they themselves could have scored a couple of goals tonight.
Look, I said earlier this week that Arsenal are one of the most disappointing teams, at the very least in English football, that I've seen for quite some time. And that is because despite how talented they are, despite the weapons that Unai Emery has at his disposal, this is a team that only plays well when things are going their way. If you come up against them and you get in their faces and challenge them and make them uncomfortable, it just seems that they don't know how to respond. The 3 losses on the trot in the league is testament to that. But then you look at how good they've been in the Europa League. And Valencia come to London tonight, start well, start on the front foot, deservedly go ahead, at which point they could have easily had a goal or two, even before they broke the deadlock. And then all of a sudden, Arsenal wake up. And now that's a challenge. Given the frailties we've seen of Arsenal of late, given how they looked in the opening 20 minutes of this game, given the fact that Valencia have an away goal, if I'm Valencia, I'm going back and saying, we can get at this team.
Yeah.
We can beat them at home. And despite the result, 3-1 looks good, but it's not that comfortable.
That's the one thing that Valencia, when it was 2-1, that was a fantastic result for Valencia tonight. If they'd have gone out 2-1.
Yeah.
Right at the death, the last knock-ins of this game, they didn't close the ball down.
Yeah.
They enabled Arsenal to put the ball in the box.
Let Aubameyang get that third. Brad, from your perspective, how do you explain this Jekyll and Hyde nature of Arsenal? So good in the last round against Napoli, home and away, and then those 3 disastrous Premier League defeats, now this.
I think it goes back to what Shaka's saying. I think Arsenal, they've, for the last few years, lacked a little bit of fight. I think when you look at the teams Arsenal lost against in the Premier League, these are teams that a team like Arsenal don't want to see. They don't want to go there. I think when Valencia come to the Emirates, it's a nice, almost like a pass around. There's not too much physical attributes needed, and I think they're gonna have to toughen up so we can expect one performance from them every week. I think whenever there's a battle involved, they tend to lose that.
Well, the odds look like this now. Arsenal heavy favourites, 2-9 on to reach the UEFA League final, which is in Baku, by the way. Just to remind you, Valencia at 3-1 outsiders. Second leg on May the 9th. The other half of the Europa League equation, of course, is Eintracht Frankfurt and Chelsea. That first leg finishing 1 apiece. Let's bring in Raf Honigstein on that. Your verdict on what we saw in Frankfurt, Raf?
Well, I think Maurizio Sarri can be very pleased with his performance, with the performance of the team. Once they came through this early period of dominance, of real pressure from Frankfurt, once they started playing their own game, they were the much better side. And if anything, I think the 1-1 draw flattered Frankfurt a little bit by the end of the game, keeps the tie alive. Frankfurt will be looking to have more attackers available. This time they only had Jovic by himself. He still scored the goal, but he looked around and there was no Rebic, there was no Aller. Pacienza only came on late on, so they were a little bit light up front and a little bit heavy on their feet, with legs coming in quite heavily, and Chelsea doing well to make them run, to keep the ball, and just failing to, I think, take really advantage and get that second goal.
Raf, from the raised by Maurizio Sarri, not starting Eden Hazard. Was he vindicated in that decision, do you think?
It's difficult to say. I mean, in the first half, Chelsea were pretty poor, and Frankfurt were well worth the lead. They were the better side. They created chances, and it took an individual goal from Pedro right before half-time to level it. Of course, then to bring on Hazard when the opposition are really literally down on their feet and going down with cramps could have been a masterstroke, but Hazard didn't seem to be quite into it, didn't really show us the usual kind of excellence in the box, and you could find arguments why it worked and you can find arguments why it hasn't worked. If the season ends with Hazard being still in great form and Chelsea succeeding both in the league and maybe we're winning the Champions League, then you can say he's managed it really well with all the other injuries. But on the night, it's very difficult to come down one way or the other because he kind of nearly blew it. But then in the end, it worked out really well. So hard one to call, hard one to judge.
I guess, Shaka, the proof will be in the pudding, won't it? If they wipe the floor with Watford and Hazard's the star of the show on Sunday. But what did you make of the decision? Were you...
I thought it was a strange one, especially, listen, I understand that Hazard has been playing an awful lot and he's key to everything about Chelsea. But the fact of the matter is you're still not guaranteed of a top 4 spot. You want to qualify for the Champions League. I don't think you take any of these competitions for granted. And as much as on paper, Chelsea against Eintracht Frankfurt, there should only be one winner, particularly over 2 legs. You look at Frankfurt and their record over the course of this calendar year in particular, and some of these scalps they've claimed over the last couple of rounds, I thought it was a huge gamble taken by Maurizio Sarri. As Ralph rightly points out, maybe it's worked out. But it's not one I would have taken.
Well, let's see what the odds makers make of who is going to be playing in Baku. They say Chelsea, unequivocally, 3-10.
You like saying Baku, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I'm going to say it again before we're done. Eintracht Frankfurt, 12-5 outsiders, so about 2.5 to 1 on. Are those odds, Raf, about right, do you think, for the Germans? What sort of chance do you give them at Stamford Bridge?
I'd give them a slightly better chance. I mean, it's moved from sort of 60-40 to maybe 80-20, but it's a reasonable chance. I think Chelsea have to be much more on it. They can't afford to kind of sleepwalk through the first half. We saw in the last round how sloppy they were and how many chances and goals they could have conceded. If they play against Frankfurt that way, taking their progress for granted, I think they will be punished. And I think Frankfurt will come into this thinking, you know what, absolutely no problem for us, no pressure, we got nothing to lose. I think we might see a similar game in terms of the psychology that we saw when Ajax came to Spurs. They're just enjoying the fact that they're there, and the pressure will be on Chelsea to stay true to their favourite role. So I wouldn't write them off just that hastily.
Yeah, the dream of that Eintracht Frankfurt Ajax Super Cup in August is still very much alive.
Who's got that dream?
Someone in Baku has that dream. Chelsea are playing Watford on Sunday, and Arsenal at home to Brighton, as we remind you of that chase, if you can call it that, for the top 4 places. Well, it's tough for those headline writers to find a new way to describe Messi, isn't it? Maestro, genius, the magic of